by less than 100,000 votes. But he won the mail-in balloting by over 400,000 votes, winning mail-in balloting by more than 2-1. He needs those mail-in ballots. So what the Republican legislature did a couple weeks after the election is pass SB 202, and that virtually outlaws mail-in balloting during a runoff. They cut the runoff time to 28 days, so there's really no time to print ballots, ask for them, get them, fill them out, and get them back in. They've also shuttered 77% of the drop boxes for your mail-in ballots in Atlanta. 77% have been closed, and those that are open are inside buildings, so you can only go during business hours. So you've had something like, you ready? Over an 80% drop-off in mail-in voting. Those are Warnock votes. So if you can't mail in your vote, you got to go wait in line. So what people are saying, oh, hooray, there's no Jim Crow this time. There's great, look at all these black people voting. That's because most had voted by mail 2 years ago. This time, they can't vote by mail. And so what you're seeing is vote suppression of the worst order. It is down to the wire. Anyone who tells you they know how this election is going to come out is not down here, doesn't know what's going on.
There was a fellow who had made a little video clip of one of the lines in Cobb County, and probably 2/3 of the people in the line were black.
Yep.
And it went, down the street, around the corner, back around the other block, around another block.
That's not good.
And it was on Twitter, and I saw people going, hooray, or yay, look, people are turning out to vote. And I retweeted it, and I said, this is voter suppression. I mean,
yes.
I have, throughout my entire life, all the, this long life that I've had, I've always lived in largely white areas, with one exception, which is when we lived in Washington, D.C. And I've never spent more than 10 or 15 minutes in a polling place in my life.
Well, put on some blackface and come down to Georgia.
I guess
wait
so.
as long as you want, except don't take any water or pizza from anyone, because that's a felony crime. But here's the problem: early voting in this runoff was slashed from 16 days last time to 5 days in most counties, 7 days in a couple counties. So you got 2/3 reduction of the number of early voting days. So of course you're going to have longer lines because you have only 1/3 of the time for that early voting. Again, what people are saying, in fact, their Secretary of State, even Governor Brian Kemp says, look at those long lines. They're crowing about this record turnout, but they leave out something. They say it's a record turnout, but that's in-person early voting. Mail-in voting has collapsed to close to zero. I mean, it's almost eliminated. And the voting rights groups are saying, don't take a chance of mailing in your ballot. There's just not enough time. Because in Georgia, unlike California or other civilized states, it's not about postmarking your ballot by Election Day. It's about the post office delivering it on Election Day. And again, they've shuttered the drop boxes, so you can't get around the post office by sticking your ballot in a drop box. They're almost eliminated, especially in Atlanta. Though they did increase the number of drop boxes in rural white Georgia. I kid you not. That's state law. Increasing the boxes in the white counties, decreasing them by 77% in the black Atlanta counties. That's law.
Wow. So,
in Georgia.
My understanding, Greg, is that a lot of this would have been blown up by the John Lewis Voting Rights Enhancement Act and H.R. 1, the For the People Act.
100%. This could not have happened. No way, because you would need, in those laws, we return to what we had for half a century under the Voting Rights Act, which is that before you pull tricks like this, you would have to certify that this has, to the federal government, that it has no racial impact. Well, excuse me, closing 77% of the drop boxes in black Atlanta and increasing the number of drop boxes in the white counties by law, that would not, I don't think that would have passed the Jim Crow sniff test in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Would not have happened.
Right. So
you could not have cut the early voting period from 21 days, 16 days, depending on the county, down to 5 days.
Right.
No,
so I understand you're participating in a lawsuit around this?
Well, what we've done is several of the voting rights journalists and some of the major lawyers, we've filed a complaint with the U.S. Justice Department. There's no time for a lawsuit, and we don't, and look at the court we have. I'm sorry. So we're filing with the Justice Department to try to see if we can just get those drop boxes open. Do you realize they have these drop boxes, but they are shuttering them on Friday, so there'll be no souls to the polls voting at all, and the drop boxes will be closed, will be sealed up. So at least we're demanding that you have a way to stick your ballot into a drop box. Because you put it in the mail, it ain't going to get there for Tuesday.
So if you live in any of the white suburbs or the rural white parts of Georgia, you can easily find a drop box. You can easily vote by mail if you choose to. The other thing with the vote by mail, by the way, but not if you live in black Atlanta or presumably Augusta or
right. So what's happened is they said that if you can't have more than one drop box for 100,000 active voters. Now that only applies to 4 counties in the entire state. The 4 counties that make up Black Atlanta. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and so in the southern counties, you have very few lines. You have a lot of voting, and you just don't have the problems that you have in Atlanta of these massive long lines. Where people are waiting. The chairwoman of Rainbow Push waited 11 hours in November. It was insane. And so again, but you don't see this in the southern counties.
But here's the other danger, and that is the signature match on mail-in votings. I mean, my understanding is that all across the United States, and I'd love to hear what you know about this. I don't think we've discussed it before, but that all across the United States, and I believe it certainly was happening here in Oregon, the Republican Party was fielding people who would look at mail-in votes and say, that signature doesn't look real to me.
That's not experts. That's right. First of all, I have not yet, and checking with the EAC, I haven't found anyone who has faked a signature. Yet they have disqualified hundreds of thousands of ballots.
My understanding is it's millions, actually.
And in Georgia, it's by law. They have something called exact match. So if you write down Thom G. Hartmann, but you didn't register with the G, but you added the G into your signature, your ballot would be disqualified. Now, they don't disqualify anyone's ballot for this. You have these, again, that's why I call them film vigilante. You have these self-appointed vote fraud hunters who go through this stuff and challenge ballots. We have 149,000 challenges this year from these vigilante voters. And saying people don't live where they live. Famously, in our movie, we have a military, the Pentagon's expert on future warfare. He's African-American, career military, and his vote was challenged because the President of the United States assigned him to a base in California. So he asked for an absentee ballot. They said, you don't live in Georgia anymore. That wasn't the government. That was the chairman of the Republican Party in southern Georgia personally challenged this guy, 4,000 others, 149,000 challenges, almost all African Americans and young people. We went through the list.
Yeah, it's not in your movie.
It's a Jim Crow. It's a Jim Crow list, and this, if it's not whether you're for or against Warnock. It's about whether you're for or against democracy.
Yeah, and that's really the bottom line. I mean, people's signatures change over time.
These aren't experts saying, that's not a correct signature. They don't go to signature experts. And every single time they check, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation went through every single Dropbox ballot in 2020, and almost 100,000 ballots. They literally investigated every one. They didn't find a single fraudulent vote, and yet they said, we got to shutter the drop boxes in Atlanta. People are stuffing the ballot boxes with illegal votes.
Right.
So it literally is a law that applies only to Atlanta.
But I think the signature thing is going to be the secret weapon that the Republicans really are using, and I think they used it in a big way in the 2022 election. And I hope you're on this beat, Greg, because I don't have the research staff and
that's what we do.
Research chops that you do, but it sure seems to me like showing up in counties that are heavily Democratic and just challenging every single signature. I mean, I sign book plates for Free Speech TV and some of our radio stations for fundraising drives and things. And just last week, I signed a couple of hundred book plates. And so I'm sitting there watching TV, autographing book plate after book plate after book plate. If you put 20 of those book plates, laid them out on the floor, you could say that's 20 different signatures. I mean, my signature doesn't just vary as I get older. It varies from moment to moment. And
come on, Tom. We all know what you're doing. You're filling out hundreds and hundreds of ballots.
There's a 13-minute slowdown on I-85 South in 4 miles. You are still on the fastest route.
To me, it looks like it's been faked, and now that person has to come in person and say, no, I really am who I am, or their vote never gets counted. And this is just an easy way to discard hundreds of thousands, millions of Democratic votes.
Well, in fact, I spoke to a former Secretary of State in California who noted that that these challenges, for example, in Georgia, it's called exact match. You must have exactly the same signature you not only have on your registration, but say your driver's license. So sometimes the key people, for example, leave out accent marks, leave out hyphens. She said they misspell the name when they key it in, Mohammed. So who has accents in their names? Well, not a lot of Republicans is the answer.
Right. Yeah. It's an ethnic thing, as it were. So
This is serious. So Warnock this is real hot water. They've done everything they can to stop the voting. But you have to say, the one thing I will say, the reason you do see those long lines is that African Americans here are so used to fighting Jim Crow. They're fighting it tooth and nail. They're waiting in those lines. They won't give up. Like I said, my lawyer went, and Jesse Jackson's lawyer went 11 hours. I mean, people are not going to give up, but still, it's murder, and they're going to disqualify so many mail-in ballots. And that's why the voting rights groups are saying, don't even try to mail in your ballot.
Yeah.
They're going after.
I think this is why the GOP has been going after mail-in ballots all this time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not. This isn't just a remnant of COVID and the lockdown and people wanting to vote by mail. I think this is because the Republican Party is actively challenging mail-in signature matches, and as a brand new way to throw out Democratic votes.
By the way, Vigilante can be seen for free through Tuesday through the end of the runoff. VigilanteMovie.com or go to GregPalace.com.
Yeah, I've watched this movie. It's astonishing. GregPalace.com or VigilanteMovie.com. Thank you, Greg.
You got it.
Have a good one. 18 minutes past the hour.